Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Helen and I love playing with clay, whether or not that's sculpture or throwing on the wheel. I also teach pottery, so I picked up a lot of hints and tips on how to teach beginners and learners with pottery, and I wanted to start sharing that online. So here's my next how-to pottery video. Join me in making your very own clay goddess. So I'm using stoneware clay here. It's brown earthy clay. It's my favourite clay actually. And I've got about 750 grams here, although I do take a little bit extra later on. But that's just to give you a gauge on how much clay you need to use to make the rough size of goddess that I'm making. Of course you can make them bigger or smaller, whichever suits you. And I've just taken off about a third of the clay. And then using the 2/3 that are left to then shape the clay, and I'm lengthening one end into a point, and this is going to be the legs. So if you think about the kind of length from the hips down to the toes, and here I'm just going to draw you a little example of what I have in my head. So I'm showing you the legs, the boobs, and the belly button, so that you can see which part of the body that I'm sculpting at the moment. There you go. I'm just going to rub that off because we don't need that on there for now. And I'm cutting the legs, and I'm just using a sculpting tool to do this. So you could use a knife or, a clay knife or anything that will give you a clean cut through the clay. And now she looks a little bit like a wooden peg. I'm just going to round off those legs, and I'm speeding it up again because, you really don't want to be watching every tiny movement of mine. But do take your time, pause the video where you need to. Once you've got those legs kind of refined, I then sit her up. And this is where you can start to see her taking a bit of shape. And I always sit my goddesses down. You don't have to, but this is just, something that I've been doing because it creates a base that's nice and stable for her to sit on. A standing goddess is a bit harder to balance. I just smooth the legs down whilst they're nice and straight for now. And then with this goddess, she's going to have crossed legs. So I just fold her legs over. And at this point, I managed to move her out of the camera area. So I've just skipped ahead because there's no point in showing you something you can't see. I just fold those legs around, and you'll see later on that I redo that and I change them up because as I'm sculpting, I'm constantly adapting everything to fit in and work with each other. So just because you move a piece in place, it doesn't mean it has to stay there. I'm adding on a belly here because I like my goddesses to be nice and curvy. And she's got a butt crack now. And I'm taking some of the excess clay off her back. It's not just about adding, it's also about taking away. And you'll notice that I'm constantly turning her and looking at her from all angles. I've just added some more clay for her butt, like a big booty. And I'm looking at her from all angles because, this is working in 3D, so you want to be able to see her from the sides, from the top, from the bottom, just to make sure that you aren't just sculpting from one perspective. So I'm also showing you here that you can also have her perhaps kneeling too. You don't have to have her cross-legged. You can choose how she sits or reclines, lays down, stands up. But here she's kneeling, and some of my goddesses, I like to do that. I've got a drumming goddess who is kneeling, and she looks fantastic. And there, I've recrossed her legs there. And you can see that I've done that a bit tighter. They're a bit kind of more rounded in keeping with the rest of her. Here I've rolled out some clay, a little sausage of clay, and I've cut it in half to create her boobs. And the reason why I do that is that I then get an even amount of clay for each boob. And, you know, we all know they're not completely even. That's fine. And this isn't about perfection, but it does make it easier when you're kind of trying to make a bit more of a symmetrical shape. And I'm really trying to refine those so that I'm adding a bit of weight into the boobs so they're not just kind of stuck on the front. And a bit more belly. I've decided that she needs a bit more. And you'll do this too, you know, really look at her and just keep adding, keep taking away. If you take something away, you can always add it again. And again, I'm creating a sausage, which I'm cutting in half so that I've got 2 equal lengths for her arms. And for this, because the arms are less blended, like under the armpit, I'm just going to use a little bit of slip, which is liquidized clay. So it's the same clay, just a higher water content, and that acts like glue. And then I blend as much of the arm as possible. But that slip just ensures it's got a really nice tight grip where you can't blend it under the armpit. And then for the head, I'm trying out a couple of different sizes. And I've decided to go for the smaller size and then add to it, which I think is always the better bet with a head, because if you make it too big, you know, you really just got to sort of almost destroy it again and take it off, whereas with a smaller head you can always add to it. I'm just blending that on. I stuck it on with a bit of slip as well, just because the head is, well, it's quite important that it doesn't fall off, isn't it? Blending that in. And then I'm adding to the front and the back. And as you can see, I'm turning her around because I'm thinking about the shape of our skull. It doesn't sit flat with our neckline. It kind of sticks out at the back and then sticks out at the front too. And I've just pinched out a little bit under her chin as well, just to refine her chin. And I'm just checking under her arms. I've got sidetracked. Back to the boobs. Before I do anything else, I'm just going to smooth her off. So I've got water and a paintbrush, and not too much water. I'm just going over the surface and smoothing that off. You don't have to do that. You can keep her as rustic as you like, or use, keep the tool marks and finger marks in there. That's all lovely expressions of how you've made your lovely goddess. And I can be quite rough with the brush, just to make sure that it's really smoothing off, going backwards and forwards over any rougher bits. And it's good to do that now whilst you haven't got any kind of further details to work around. And then anything that needs like rounding off, I also use the paintbrush just to almost flick it over to help round off the surface. And I just went back in with a modelling tool there to re-sculpt her belly. And I'm going in here and making some shoulder blades. And this is what, like, the real joy of sculpture for me is that there isn't really any set process. I've made a lot of goddesses, but, you know, I kind of follow the initial steps, but then after that I might decide a bit later that she needs some shoulder blades, add them on, just when I'm at the refining stage. And actually, the refining stage is the bit that can really take the most amount of time. I usually find that you can map out a whole goddess quite quickly, but then it's all the details take quite a while. So here I'm showing you the different types of hair that you could add on, just some suggestions. There's loads of different ways that you can do hair, but here's 3. One for kind of curly hair, one for wavy hair, and one for straight hair. I've decided to go for wavy hair with this lady, this goddess. So I'm just pinching the clay just to give a bit of texture. There we go. And I slip that on and make sure that that is really well stuck down, because hair is the thing that will fall off more than anything else on a goddess that I've found. And when I'm teaching it, I find that students' work, it's always the hair that seems to come off, if anything's going to come off. So I add one piece at a time. There we go, added a bit more slip, just make sure those bottom bits are all really nicely stuck on. So I'm adding another piece and I just keep building it up. You don't have to have hair on your goddess. You can have short hair, no hair. She could have a top knot, a bun, anything you like. I tend to always do the longer hair. I think it's just that kind of wild, won't be tamed kind of goddess that I'm looking for. So I add the hair to the front and I make sure it's framing her face, giving shape to the front of her face. And then once that's all on there and kind of pushed hard down, I then make a parting by pushing down the blade of my tool. Then I use the flat part of my tool just to part the clay, and it gives a bit more shape to the face. And I've just pinched the chin in a little bit just to give her face more shape. And here I'm using the end of a paintbrush just to put some holes into the top of her head so that I can now move on to making her antlers. She's got to have antlers, right? So for this, I make that sausage of clay again, and I've curved it upwards just to check the size on my goddess and cut it in half. So this is both sides of my antlers. And I'm going to work evenly on them. And I slice in to several parts of the clay and then separate those out, and they're going to form the little prongs on the antlers. And I start also manipulating that clay downwards as well, so it's like the bottom of the antler. And then I move on to the other one. And it's really good to work on one then the other in small steps so that you get that symmetry between them. And once I've done that, I cut away some of the clay too, just to refine the antlers so they look a little bit more antlery. Is that a word? It is now. And I keep tweaking the antlers, and eventually I'll put them together and just check they work together too. So this one is where I'm cutting off the excess clay on this one. And these antlers are seriously satisfying to make because they suddenly look really cool. So keep going with it. And there you have it, 2 antlers, antlery antlers. So to stick them on, I've made those holes with the bottom of the paintbrush, and that is so that they're super strong. They're kind of in a joint rather than just sticking them onto the side of the head. And I've used slip there to use as the glue, so we extra strong, and just putting those antlers into the holes, giving them a tweak to make sure they sit properly. And there she is, glorious. For this one, I mean, you can make any kind of props, a staff or incense, holding a animal. You could put a bird on her shoulder, anything you can dream of, you can make. For this one, I'm making a little pinch bowl, a little pinch dish. So it's a shallow dish. There we go. That's going to sit on her lap. And to stick that in, I'm just using a bit more slip again. And pushing that onto her lap. And I can burn incense on there, like incense cones, or put a tea light candle in there. So I've just moved her hands now into place to hold the bowl, and there she is. You can keep refining her to your heart's content. You could paint her with underglaze, carve into her, add more accessories, and just really enjoy getting to know your goddess. And it's amazing what comes out of the clay. You know, is she going to be older? Is she going to be younger? Is she going to even be a she at all? Is she going to be human? So this hopefully will give you a starting point. When my goddess is leather hard, I'll also hollow out her bottom a little bit, just so that the clay isn't as thick there, so that it dries out. I'll then candle fire her, which is firing her to about 80 degrees C for about 4 hours, which completely dries her out before I start the bisque firing. If you have liked this video, then I'd love you to subscribe and join me whilst I make more videos on how to make things out of clay. You can let me know in the comments below what kind of videos you'd like to see from me. And of course, if you make your own clay goddess, I would love to see her. So find me on Instagram and tag me in any photos you take. So if you enjoyed today's video, then I would love you to come and join me by subscribing to my channel. I will be making more videos so long as you want me to. So if you have any ideas of what you would like to see me making, then please drop a comment below. But also, if you have any comments about today's video, then please do let me know in the comments below. And I will get back to you as soon as I can. But thank you for joining me. I've really enjoyed making this video, and I hope that you enjoy your adventures with clay.